Hey everyone, welcome to Movie Talk Webcast. I am your host Brian, along with Brian.
Hello, I'm Brian.
And this is episode 3. This is the show where a couple of friends from USF talk about anything and everything that we have seen over the past 7 days, along with any movie news that we find interesting. Let's kick it off with any news that we found. Anything that you've seen, Brian?
Still just Oscar watch. I've been trying to finish all 8 of the nominees. So far I've seen 5 of them. As I said last week, we still have the clear front runners. I did hear that the test screenings for Deadpool are going very well, but I think we talked about that a bit last week. They've shown it a couple more times. The general response seems to be that this is the movie that we all hoped they would make about Deadpool.
The trailer alone, it's going to be the movie that we've all wanted.
Oh, absolutely perfect.
Yeah. I haven't read anything new since last week on that.
I will say they did release the Warner Brothers released the final release dates for both Justice League Part 1 and Wonder Woman. Those will be coming out sometime in the next few years, but pretty much right after Dawn of Justice, that's the movies they're going to be working on. I believe they're doing Wonder Woman first, and then they're doing the Justice League, but that could be the other way around.
Jumping back to Marvel, I got the next 5 X-Men movies that are coming out, 4 or 5. Deadpool is the next one to come out. That's next month, February 12th.
Yeah, Fox owns Deadpool, and Deadpool is technically a mutant, so they're going to have Deadpool exist in the
It's going to be in the same universe.
Yeah, it's going to be in the X-Men universe. It's not going to be in the Avengers universe.
Yeah. X-Men Apocalypse comes out later this year in May.
I'm very excited about that one. That one looks really good.
I have mixed reviews or mixed feelings on that.
I think Oscar Isaac playing Apocalypse will be very entertaining. Plus, this is technically the last movie in the trilogy started with X-Men First Class, and I really liked First Class and Days of Future Past, so I'm very interested to see how they're going to wrap that up.
What do you feel about Channing Tatum playing Gambit?
I actually think that that's a good choice. I think that Channing Tatum is a very good comedic actor, and obviously you need a big name in order to launch a franchise off of a character that maybe the fans know, but Gambit getting his own movie was entirely based around the idea that they could get an actor like Channing Tatum, not because Gambit does have his own comic series, but he's never really been a standalone character. He's always been more part of the X-Men team, so I understand why they're doing it, and I don't hate Channing Tatum as a choice.
No, and I like him even as an actor overall. I've never seen Magic Mike, but I like him in pretty much everything else that he's played in.
Yeah,
and he's really funny, and he can play that character well.
I think he did a good job in The Hateful Eight, although, spoiler alert.
I forgot he was in that.
He is in that movie. They tried to keep his involvement in the film secret, though, since his character sort of comes in towards the end.
Wolverine 3, this is the last movie that we will see Hugh Jackman as.
Well, they're saying what they're going to do for that is the Old Man Logan storyline, where it shows Wolverine in a post-apocalyptic future. And I would be very excited to see that because obviously Hugh Jackman is getting a bit older, and I think that if they're going to do a standalone Wolverine movie, that's territory they haven't covered yet, and I really like the source material for that. So I would be very down for an Old Man Logan movie.
And Patrick Stewart, they said, is coming back as Professor X.
Which he should. He's
just
perfect.
as a nice send-off to that era of Wolverine.
Yeah, I'm a little sad. I think that it's James McAvoy, right? Who's playing him in the younger movies. I think the new actor they got does an amazing job, but let's face it, Patrick Stewart is Professor X. They're never going to find anybody that's going to be better casting for that role.
That comes out March 3rd of next year, and the next movie, or the 4th movie, is New Mutants. You never hear about that?
I'm very excited about that. New Mutants is the younger generation of the X-Men.
It's not going to be a reboot. It's just going to be another story. It's another story.
Team, which is why I think that it's a good idea that Fox has the X-Men, because they're kind of trying to create their own cinematic universe with just the X-Men. And I think you can do that. Of all the major Marvel franchises, I think that the X-Men, because it's mutants in that whole world, and there's about 50 different X-Men teams that are all very interesting in their own right. So I think you can do a cinematic universe with just the X-Men comics and the various teams, and it would be very interesting.
And it's going to be interesting to see how they keep the X-Men franchise separate, because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Disney, they're going to have Inhumans in a couple of years, which is pretty much mutants. It's just not considered mutants because it's not. They can't use the word mutants.
Well, no. Actually, in the original comics, the Kree, the race that Ronan the Accursed, the blue aliens in Guardians of the Galaxy, the Kree create something called the Terrigen crystals, which they've already gone into that in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So technically, Inhumans are aliens. They're human spliced with alien DNA, whereas mutants are higher life form version, like the evolved version of human, like regular human beings. So
that makes sense. See, I don't know everything, but
yeah, technically, Inhumans are humans that are spliced with alien DNA.
All right. Well, that's what I read up on, is the future movies. I did read a quick article about pretty much how Disney will go on forever with superheroes in Marvel, because there's thousands of characters and storylines that they can keep throwing out.
Well, and they're introducing just this Phase 3. They're introducing several more franchises. They're introducing the new Spider-Man, Doctor Strange. They can still do another movie or two out of Guardians of the Galaxy. The Avengers can keep going for a long time.
And you're going to have the new Avengers when you have Falcon and Scarlet Witch.
And then you can do, they're also introducing Captain Marvel and the Inhumans. So just Phase 3, if they stick to their doing 3 movies for each individual franchise, they have about 6 new franchises that they can do 2 more films each, and something like Guardians of the Galaxy, if they want to go 4 or 5, they could certainly do that.
And very similar to that, I was listening to my podcast that I always listen to every week, and they brought up an article that said, we might be, because we're still fairly young, but those that have been around that were alive when the first 3 Star Wars movies came out, that they probably won't be alive when the final Star Wars movie is released, because Disney has plans to pretty much release a new Star Wars film every year until fans stop buying tickets.
Well, they might make it to episode 9, which will be the end of the
It doesn't even have to be a continuing like episode 10, 11. I mean, just look at Rogue One, and they're taking all these side stories.
No, I agree
they can
with
do
you
a Han Solo movie. They're doing Rogue One, which is basically
a
3.5.
They could do 3 Han Solo movies, honestly, as long as they said it early enough. I agree with you. They'll probably continue the spin-off films long
There's so much material that they can pull from it. Until fans stop buying tickets and get bored with it, they're gonna roll them out.
Well, and Disney has proven that they can keep franchises going with the way that they've handled their Marvel properties. I really wouldn't be surprised if after the new trilogy we see another prequel trilogy like Knights of the Old Republic, where it's like the origins of the Sith and the Jedis. So that would be, there's 50 different directions they can go with this. It's I agree with you. That's kind of interesting. This will outlast people who saw the original franchise.
Which is a perfect segue into this video that I saw on YouTube last week, and this guy created a real-life lightsaber.
Did he really?
Yeah, it's pretty much, go on YouTube and watch it. He basically takes the base of like a toy lightsaber and manufactures in a way where there's an ignition or a lighter inside, and it spews out this like 3-foot flame, blue flame. And it's working, and they put on these big trench coats.
And it is a laser that can cut through things.
It's fire. It's not. It's fire. It's really cool. And
close enough.
And you got to check out too. It's the same guy who built his own hammer, Thor's hammer. He used magnets. He used magnets and a finger scanner so that only he can pick it up. So it's the same guy who did them both. That was just a cool video.
Yeah, that guy needs to keep. Is this also the guy who did the Wolverine claws?
I'm sure if he's done those two, I'm sure he's worked in a lot of other.
I'm all down for people continuing to make things like that a reality. He is an awesome human being, and people should give him money on Kickstarter or whatever format he asks for it so he can keep being awesome.
Yeah, so check out the video. I think it's just like guy invents real life lightsaber. Just check it out. It's pretty cool. All right. Anything else you got news-wise?
Not news-wise. Are we going to move on to what movies we saw this week?
Yeah, we'll do our quick reviews of anything that we've seen over since last Wednesday.
Yep.
So you go ahead and start at that.
Yeah, I only saw, I saw 2 movies this week, but I'm going to wait to talk about the other one, see if Brandon will see it in the next couple weeks. I did see Creed, but I've been suggesting to him that he watch that, so I'll see if he gets around to seeing that. Now, Brandon talked about last week that he saw The Big Short, and I really wanted to see that, and I saw it, and that is now my new front runner for Best Picture. It won't win, but that's the one that I want to win. I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. It was an amazing mix of comedy and drama. It did a really good job of boiling down a very complicated idea, which is how Wall Street crashed, and explaining it in a way that pretty much anybody can understand it, while at the same time using humor so it was entertaining. And
unless you're in that industry, you didn't understand half the movie, and they did such a great job with dumbing it down to a certain extent to where the average moviegoer can understand. Not that I didn't understand half the dialogue. I knew what was going on. I knew the premise. I had no idea when they were talking like logistics, like the numbers and terminology. I had no idea, but they even broke away from the movie when they had like Selena Gomez and Anthony Bourdain come in and just kind of like explain
My
something.
actual favorite part of the movie was when he was just like, you're not understanding any of this jargon, so we're going to have a supermodel in a hot tub explain it to you. And she would just supermodel in a bubble bath explaining all these complicated concepts, and I was like, this is brilliant.
Which that supermodel is the future Harley Quinn.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That was the actress
Margot
from
Robbie,
Wall Street. Yes, I couldn't remember her name, but I thought that was her, but I didn't want to say it was her in case I was wrong.
Yeah. This is the movie that I said it's a movie, one of the few movies that you have no idea what they're talking about, but yet you're really interested, and then you're going to be really pissed off at the end of the movie, but you loved it so much.
Yes,
this
was I cannot understate this. This was a hilarious movie, and the performances, probably from a cast standpoint, like all the actors in the film, probably the strongest cast out of any of the Best Picture nominees that I've seen so far. I do think it's a shame that Spotlight is probably going to win. Not that Spotlight doesn't deserve it, just I thought The Big Short was better, and that's just my opinion. But, it's all subjective. Just because something wins Best Picture of the Year doesn't mean that it was. So, I think we all remember Titanic, right? Yeah, I don't like that movie.
Anything else there, though?
Well, that's what I saw this week. I did a lot of TV watching.
What'd you see?
I
know Agent Carter came out last week or 2 weeks ago. It was the 19th that came out. I haven't started yet.
Started at a bunch of friends' requests. I had a friend tell me that I should check out Once Upon a Time because one of my favorite shows is Lost, and they said that it was a very similar show in the way that they structured it, and I have been enjoying it. It totally ripped off Lost, but like in a way that I enjoy it, and I think it's like an homage, not necessarily just like
the fairy tale show.
Ripping it off. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I didn't think. Yeah, I know. I heard like Disney fairy tale, and my eyes rolled into the back of my head.
It's like a dark version of.
Yes, my friend was like, "No, you have to watch it." Like, I know it doesn't necessarily sound like something you would like, and I started watching it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it is kind of like a dark adult version of this." It's not the greatest show I've ever seen, but I've been watching that recently. I enjoy it.
Again, I have a wife, so I watched another chick flick this week. It was Crazy Stupid Love.
That was actually a very good movie.
It was much better and a lot funnier than How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, that's for sure.
I almost didn't really consider Crazy Stupid Love a chick flick. I considered it a really, really good romantic comedy. Anybody who wants to make a romantic comedy, go watch that movie. It's like you will equally enjoy it if you're a guy.
Yeah. And unless you're not Ryan Gosling, and then you get really jealous when he takes your shit.
Oh yeah. You see Ryan Gosling in that movie, and like almost, it's like watching the movie Drive, like both Drive and Crazy Stupid Love. You're just sitting there as a guy being like, I will never be this attractive. Like
I turned to my wife and I said, "Don't get any ideas. You married me for who I am. Just stop it."
Right. I think what we're trying to say is Gosling is a gorgeous man.
And he was really good in The Big Short, by the way.
Well, and yeah, he was actually one of the actors. I didn't hear anybody talking about Ryan Gosling's performance, and he plays the narrator.
And he played a really big role in that movie.
Yeah, he was the narrator, and I thought he was really funny because Gosling doesn't do as many comedic performances, even though he is really funny, with the exclusion of Crazy Stupid Love, another good comedic performance.
And I might get hated for this, but I'm not always a big fan of Emma Stone and her acting. I think she's had better roles than... I think she was great in Birdman. And I thought she played...
Birdman, by far, her best movie.
Yeah, and I thought she was pretty good in the Spider-Man series. I didn't care for Easy A, and wasn't that thrilled with her acting in this movie.
I think her two credits to her name is Birdman is, oh, look, she can be like a really serious actress in like a role that doesn't require her to be the desirable girl that everybody wants. A lot of people forget she was in Superbad. I thought she was really good in that.
That's true. Yeah, I did forget about that one.
I actually thought that out of the new Spider-Man movies, she was actually more interesting than Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Her playing Gwen Stacy was amazing.
I think especially because we didn't have a Gwen Stacy really in the first trilogy. You had her in the third movie. But you found out more about her in this one, and you already knew Spider-Man, so I think to me that's why she was a little more interesting.
The one distinction that a lot of people talk about the shortcomings of the Amazing Spider-Man franchise versus the original Spider-Man franchise, there's a lot of things you can criticize the Amazing Spider-Man for. The one thing that it definitely did better than the original franchise was Mary Jane and the other ones was this flat two-dimensional character. Like, it didn't have any strong female characters, and the love story was kind of blah, and Amazing Spider-Man, the love story was amazing, and Emma Stone was actually one of the most compelling like female characters I've seen in a major franchise, a superhero movie like ever.
Yeah, and I just don't want to get too off track with everything. I thought the end of Crazy Stupid Love was good with the whole reveal of who's who, and I won't say anything. And
that was a nice little twist.
I think for people that can predict movies, it's probably predictable. It was when you see like, oh yeah, of course I knew that was going to happen. But I'm not one like that. Like, I can't sit here and be like, I know people that are like that. They can say, oh, this is what's going to happen, and it plays out that way. I always try to be, but then I'm always wrong.
It wouldn't be a romantic comedy if there weren't certain aspects that you can figure out after the first 10 minutes.
I can. I suck at that, but it played out pretty well. I thought it was a good ending.
I do love that scene in Crazy Stupid Love where where Steve Carell's wife is telling him about how she cheated on him, and he just opens the car door and rolls out of the car.
I do have to say, I feel like an idiot. I waited the entire movie for Jennifer Garner to come. And you might be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, on the cover of the DVD case, and it's Steve Carell and looking at his wife, at a quick glance, I thought that was Jennifer Garner. I didn't look into it, and I thought maybe, all right, they get divorced, and then Jennifer Garner becomes his new love interest, and never came. I'm like, probably a good hour into the movie, I was like, is she ever coming in? And then I looked at the cover, and I was like, oh, that's not her. So I felt really stupid when I was watching.
I'm kicking myself right now because I love that actress. She just won for Still Alice last year. Cannot remember her name. The one who was in Crazy Stupid Love. She was also in The Kids Are All Right, Boogie Nights. She wanted an Emmy for playing Sarah Palin in Game Change. Again, cannot.
Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore. I should have known that. I love Julianne Moore. She's great.
All right. We'll move on. So it's a long discussion about Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah.
We'll make this one quick. I Am Legend.
You had never seen that before?
No, I didn't. Okay. I own like 500 movies, so I haven't seen them all yet. A lot of my movies came from my brother when he basically sold me his collection, and I just haven't gotten around to watching them. I have seen I Am Legend. I'm kind of going through the movies that I haven't seen since I've owned them.
What did you think of I Am Legend the first time you saw it?
I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
I thought it was okay, but I was a lot younger and probably didn't pay too much attention. I think World War Z is a lot better. as far as a zombie type movie. And I know this really wasn't zombies. It was more of an
But
infection
for all
that
intents
turned.
and purposes, it was a zombie.
I think that's the way they tried to play it off when they marketed it. Was he's the lone survivor in New York City with a bunch of zombies.
They were supposed to be vampires, but they switched it to zombie
because that was the craze coming out.
Yeah, that was in at the time.
Will Smith, he's the best part of the movie without a doubt. I think he plays that role great, and I think he's great for holding a movie by himself. If there's few actors that can be the only actor in the whole movie and make it really fun, and
I was about to say that he is one of the few major famous actors who can hold a movie by himself and have it still be interesting.
My two biggest issues with the movie, and I'm sure with everybody, was the CGI looked way too fake.
Yeah, it has not aged well.
No, it was so bad. And for a movie that came out in 2007 or 2008, I was expecting better.
The problem with that movie was that they didn't have as much money for CGI because they blew the whole budget shutting down New York for 3 weeks while they filmed. They had to pay the
it just looks everything from the animals to the infected humans was so bad. And then, how did the woman and her child get out of the city? That bothered me. Like, they're in the building, and Will Smith does what he has to do to get them out, and then they fade out, they fade back in, and they're in like Vermont or something with the cure, and it's like, how did they get off the island? They couldn't have gotten off. If they got off now, they couldn't have gotten off. At least show it.
Spoiler alert, anybody who hasn't seen that movie, you should have. It's been out for a very long time. They play it on TBS all the time. So Will Smith sacrifices himself to give the cure to this mother and child that he meets, and they go and give the cure to everybody and save humanity. That was not the original film ending. The reason the ending to the film seems so like what the F is because they changed it because it didn't do well with test audiences. In the original one, you find out that the monsters are actually thinking like human beings, and he realizes that they're not monsters, they're the next evolution of humanity, which this is also the book's ending that it was based on, and he decides to just let them go and not try and hurt them anymore because he's the monster. He's the boogeyman that goes into their world and steals their people and brings them back to his lair, so he realizes he's the monster, i.e. I Am Legend. So
that seems like a whole lot better of a movie.
Yes, but test audiences didn't like it because it was basically humanity.
Well, I think they should go back and retest it compared to this movie, and I think they might like it a lot more.
It was a sad ending where it was like humanity's screwed and Will Smith isn't the hero, he's the villain, and he has to realize this, and that's not what audiences were looking for in that movie because Will Smith kind of promises a certain kind of movie. You're thinking like Independence Day where he just comes, or Men in Black where he just comes in and saves the day and everything's all happy. So they decided to change it to that ending. If you actually buy I think the DVD, if you go back and check it, it should have the alternate ending.
I don't know if I'll go back, but maybe I might.
It's still not a great movie, but it's better. The alternate ending is much better.
Yeah. And for some reason, Netflix sent me the rules of the game, which I guess I just revealed is Darius' number one pick. But he's not here for the second straight week, so I don't know when he'll be back, so I don't care.
Yeah,
for some reason, they sent me that movie. We'll talk about it
we might finish it up
in a couple weeks. If we don't finish up with him, I'll talk about it in a couple weeks, but I'll hold off on him.
Okay.
And then I saw our number 3 movies, and then we'll talk about Mad Max. But we'll talk about Mad Max later on.
Yeah, segue. Do you want to do our number 3 movies right now?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
So, Darius is not here. His number 3 movie of all time was Prisoners. This I kind of want to still talk about because I remember you and I had a conversation last week, and you said that you didn't agree when people said that it was underrated. I thought it was underrated. The second time I watched it. I saw it the first time.
That was a movie that outside of film nerds or people that are really into movies and go see everything like Brandon who just go to the movie theater constantly, not a lot of people heard about that movie. Now, the chatter I heard was this movie should have been nominated for Best Picture. This was the best movie of the year.
I don't think it was Best Picture quality.
It should have gotten more attention than it deserved. It's certainly a good film. It's just out of the people I heard, they were talking about it like it was the greatest movie ever, and I just thought it was a nice little crime drama.
I mean, you have a leading cast of Hugh Jackman, Terrence Howard, and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, the acting in
It's
it's
great.
great.
It seems great.
That's the only reason I think it's a really good movie, because the acting in it is spectacular. I think the actual plot leaves a little something to be desired.
Well, this was the second time I watched it, and I knew when I was going to watch it the second time, I knew it was a long movie. And the first time I didn't, and I thought it just really dragged on. But then watching it a second time, I realized it was long, 2.5 hours, but it was necessary. And here's why, because you're talking about an event where kids are abducted. If anybody doesn't know the premise, Hugh Jackman and Terrence Howard's kids are abducted, and they search for them for a whole week. And Jake Gyllenhaal leads the investigation, to find the kids.
Hugh Jackman and Terrence Howard goes to some extreme measures to try and find their kids.
And I think it does a good job at showing that parents will go to extreme lengths for their children, no matter what it is. And would anybody really do what Hugh Jackman did in this movie in real life? Probably not, but
I could think of a few people.
I'm sure there are, but I don't, the normal average day father might not, but I guess it depends on the situation. But I think it was long because of the process of trying to find these children and the grieving process. And I think you can't show their emotion, you can't show what they're feeling, what the families are feeling in a 90-minute film. And I think it develops over time and over the 2.5 hours, but I think it was necessary. I have no problem with it being 2.5 hours.
I will say, to the movie's credit, good pacing. I thought the long run time was necessary.
It didn't drag out. There were really no slow parts. It does
hold your attention.
It's not action, but it holds your attention, like you said.
Although there are some violent sequences. The one thing that I think the film had to its credit, other than the acting, was I did really like the ending. I heard some people disagree with me about that, but I thought it was the kind of ending that the film needed. Again, this is a movie that I know it sounds like I'm trashing this movie. I'm not. It's just that I thought it was a good film. Didn't really strike me as something that I absolutely loved. But I would definitely recommend this movie if you're into films like that, or if you like any of these actors.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a movie worth checking out at least once. Maybe if I see it at the $5 bin in Walmart or something, I'll go ahead and pick it up.
Yeah, don't blow the bank on this one for the super special edition, but if you see it in the $5 bin and you're looking for a fun watch, this is definitely a good movie.
Definitely rented. It's definitely
I can see why Darius liked this so much. He's into writing, and the plot or the script is tight. I just feel that there were certain aspects of the plot that weren't really necessary. Like they have this kind of
there's a lot of twists in it, especially towards the end, that will kind of shock you. And
I can see why Darius likes this, though, because this is very much the kind of movie that he would write. I know his personal sensibility, same thing as when we talked about 9 Dead. I could see this being the sort of script that he would turn out himself.
Well, I guess if he's back next week, we'll talk more about this and Up, which is his number 4 mid-film. I just wanted to get off my mind because I didn't know until today that he wasn't coming. So anyway,
we miss you guys.
We'll miss. We'll move on then from that.
Okay.
Do you want to do yours or mine?
Let's do yours because yours is the more famous one.
Yeah, but I could talk about this for a whole hour.
All right, let's talk about American Beauty.
All right, good. That's also
and as I just said, my number 3 is American Beauty. This is Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Screenplay, Best Director winner. It's notable Sam Mendes, the director, who also did the last 2 James Bond movies, Skyfall and Spectre. This was his first movie, and he won Best Director and Best Picture for it. There are very few examples of that, where someone just comes out of nowhere and creates an American masterpiece. Now, I know.
I actually have on my notes, and I'll show it to you if you want. Under American Beauty, for the first tab, I put near masterpiece.
Yes, I know this is a very controversial movie. People either think that this is the greatest movie ever, like myself, or they think that it's overly pretentious and has not aged well and is very much a 90s film. To those people, I say, you're not on this webcast. I am, so we're not going to talk about your opinions. Although I will acknowledge Yes, the bag scene is stupid. We all know the bag scene is stupid. That doesn't mean that this isn't a great movie. The most beautiful thing I've ever filmed, whether it's the floating plastic
Oh
bag.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I was
we all know that that's a dumb scene. There's plenty of masterpieces that have dumb scenes in it. That doesn't make this not a great movie. But this is one of those films that's just like a palate cleanser for me. I can watch it anytime, and it just reminds me of everything I love about cinema. I think the visuals are gorgeous. I love the script, and this is my absolute favorite performance by my favorite actor of all time, Kevin Spacey, because Kevin Spacey usually plays villains or Southern gentlemen who are also villains. Basically, if you've seen him in House of Cards, that's usually the role he plays in every movie. He's playing a very different role, a defeated 40-something-year-old suburban father who finds a reason to live again, which is ironic because you find out at the beginning of the movie that he will be dead by the end of the film. It's also a little risky.
Yeah, I wouldn't say spoiler alert, he dies, but he
they
spoils it for you in the
they
first
tell
30
you
seconds.
It's trying to figure out how he dies. It's also interesting because people kind of forget that this is controversial, sort of like The Graduate did that with the idea of an extramarital affair between a younger guy and an older woman. The thing that makes Kevin Spacey want to live again is that as a 40-year-old man, he wants to sleep with his daughter's 16-year-old cheerleader friend.
And we'll go 18. I don't know.
Yeah, let's something like that. She's in high school. This is not okay. So, and you're still able to somewhat sympathize with this character, even though that's not something that you should aspire to do when you're 40.
And Spacey is the perfect actor for any character who will do whatever it takes to get his own way, and he does it in any movie that he plays. He doesn't care about. I wouldn't say he doesn't care about anybody else, but he'll do whatever he has to do to get what he wants.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie is the scene where he walks up, he quits his job, and then he goes over to a fast food place and asks for a new job, and they ask him, "What would you like to do?" And he goes, "I want whatever has the least amount of responsibility possible."
Yeah.
Ends up being a fry
I guess we'll
cook.
throw a spoiler alert. My favorite scene in the whole movie was when he's working in the drive-thru and his wife and
the guy
and her boss or her coworker comes up and he just plays along like nothing's going on and is just a real smartass about it.
And he has that line in there, and he was like, "Well, I can't answer your question. Technically, that's Angela's department." And he just points to the overweight 17-year-old who's his boss.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. A lot of the other characters are great too. Annette Bening as his wife is absolutely amazing. I think that the daughter is really good. The other son and the father for the family that move in next door are very good. This is very much an ensemble cast. I mean, if you don't like movies that are super arty, and there's some very fantasy elements to this movie, so if you don't like super arty films, then I wouldn't necessarily suggest this, but it's a good crowd-pleasing movie that's also very well done.
And if you like Kevin Spacey, this
is a must.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
you like Kevin Spacey, you have to see this movie. Although I do have a lot of friends that think that the movie is very pretentious. But like I said, they're not on this podcast, so they can start their own podcast. And
again, you think it's pretentious. To me, it was thoroughly entertaining.
Yeah, that's what I like about this. I think
it kept me interested the whole way through, and to me, that's what I like about a movie. It doesn't have to be artsy. It doesn't have to be mainstream. It doesn't have to be an indie film. It just has to hold my attention and be entertaining, and that's what this movie did.
Well, I think the best thing about this movie is that everybody can relate to one of the characters because it's just about that suburban, hashtag white people.
You know how I said last week that I feel like Netflix kind of misled me on the description of the movie?
Yeah.
I kind of feel that's how they did it with this one because the description was along the lines of a 40-year-old man going through his midlife crisis, finds a way out by basically falling for his daughter's best friend from high school.
Which technically is the plot.
It is the plot.
Not a great description.
But yes.
It's the point of this movie is a bunch of suburban white people who supposedly are living the American dream, and they're all really miserable, and they're trying to find any way out that they can.
See, and I see it as a movie about a really dysfunctional family. You have a wife who's extremely materialistic and cares more about her job and the things that she has and owns more than she does her family. A daughter who has two parents that pretty much hate each other, and it's like any other teenager out there that wants to do their own thing
Is
and
insecure.
is very insecure and will go rogue on you and do whatever they want. And Kevin Spacey, the father, who is having a midlife crisis, who
hates his life,
who knows that his job is in jeopardy that he's had for 14 years, but the upper management doesn't care about the little people, and he knows he's going to get fired, and that just throws him over the edge. And then you have a wife who doesn't love him or doesn't sexually love him and things like that, and that pisses him off.
He's not getting any sex, which
I think it's more about the whole family in general, because I think each member of the family, all three of them, I think they have an equal amount of screen time, and I think they have an equal amount of their story told. So I don't feel that it's strictly or more about Kevin Spacey than it is the other two.
That is a very interesting point you bring up. I always viewed this movie as something that was supposed to be making a commentary about the American dream, and that each of the characters were supposed to be archetypes, but that we were supposed to be able to relate to. But you're right. You're right, Brandon. These characters are very well fleshed out, so you could view this as just a standalone story of one family. You don't have to relate to it. It doesn't have to say anything about America in general, and you can still really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way.
I think as a supporting actor, Chris Cooper is awesome.
Deservedly got an Oscar nom for this.
Yeah, did he?
Yeah,
I didn't
win. I think he won for adaptation, but he didn't win for this movie. But he did. Yeah, Chris Cooper, one of the better.
He plays the next door neighbor that moved in, and a very
ex-military, abusive to his son.
Yeah, but feels old-fashioned, I guess. You can say.
Well, in this movie,
they have gay neighbors, and he loathes them, and that plays into later on in the movie, which we won't get into.
And there was a lot of drug use in this movie,
which we will get into. So I'll say spoiler alert.
You have Kevin Spacey smoking weed just openly when he stops caring about the status quo. This movie had a lot of very controversial subjects in it for the 90s.
Yeah. Oh, very. And if anybody hasn't seen this movie, and I'm going to talk about the ending, so in 3 seconds, we're going to talk about it.
Spoiler alert, skip this about 30 seconds, or skip this about 10 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was shocked at who killed him.
Oh, that it was
Chris and not the wife.
Okay, so spoiler alert, it turns out Chris Cooper, the reason, surprise, that he hates gay people so much is he's secretly gay and he's in love with Kevin Spacey. He makes the moves on Kevin Spacey, and Kevin Spacey obviously doesn't return his affections.
Wait, do you think he was secretly gay?
Oh, he was. There's actually an earlier version of the script where it turns out that he had a gay lover in Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
So he is actually gay.
I just thought when he went into the garage and kissed him, it was more of what's my son going through?
No.
And that's how I took it, because he sees his son.
He thinks his son is performing oral sex on Kevin Spacey, and he's really just rolling him a joint.
Yeah. And then when he goes over to the garage and kisses Kevin Spacey, I took it as he has a very disconnect with his son, and I think he's just trying to find what it is that he thinks his son is into.
But the reason he kills him is because he reveals to Kevin Spacey that he's gay, and he can't let anybody know. Now, that is an interesting reading of the film, and obviously any reading of a movie is valid. I think that's an interesting way to read the movie, but I just know because I've read in the original script that he did have a gay partner in Vietnam and spent the rest of the years being ashamed of that.
Okay.
So, but that's an interesting reading of the film. I mean, it works. You could watch the movie and think that's what happened. I don't think it really takes away from the overall message.
Well, makes sense.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm done.
Did you know the dad was going to be the person who killed him?
No, I really thought the wife was.
Yeah,
then up until they widen out on the shot and show Chris Cooper with the gun, and then show him put him back in his case, even after he was killed, I thought.
Okay, as long as we're talking about the ending, I thought the best reveal in the movie was the cheerleader that Kevin Spacey is trying to go for, who's always talking about how promiscuous she is. Finally, Kevin Spacey gets her to where she's going to sleep with him, and she says that she's a virgin, and he decides not to sleep with her and finds out that the real happiness he was looking for was finding out that his daughter has found somebody that she's in love with and that she's happy. And so he does die with a smile on his face. I really like that whole sequence, though. The whole sequence where he starts undressing her and then she reveals that she's a virgin. I thought that whole sequence was gorgeous. That's probably my favorite part of the movie.
All right, I'm done talking about this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is your favorite movie.
If you skipped first spoiler, enter here. This point.
All right.
Okay.
Well, my number 3 movie. Before we,
although the movie's like over 10 years old, you should have. There's no. I think the statute of limitations for spoiler alert is gone after like 10 years.
Oh yeah, especially with my number 3 movie. And
Oh,
before
yeah.
I go ahead and reveal it, I am in no way a Star Wars nerd, and I don't claim to know everything. I claim to know like 3% of everything that is Star Wars. So I can say I can talk about this movie, but I can be totally wrong in some of the things that I say. I know there are people out there that know Star Wars like the back of their hand and know every backstory that's never been told in a movie, and I'm not like that, but I just love The Empire Strikes Back.
And I am going to say, if you're a Star Wars nerd and we mention something like a unit of measurement that is slightly off or do a timeline thing, we're not talking about the franchise here. We're talking about this as a standalone movie, and quite frankly, if you want to call us out on the little tidbits that we miss, shut up. We're talking about the overall film. We don't
our
care
last
about
video only garnered like 3 views, you, me, and my brother. So I'm not really sure how many people are going to watch this. But
okay.
Anyway, the episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, is my number 3 favorite movie of all time. But it is the movie that I get most excited to watch, if that makes any sense.
I will say that Empire is probably the strongest of the original trilogy.
It's the strongest of all of them, including even the 7th one.
Yes. Well, I guess we can say that now. It's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best Star Wars.
And I think it always will. And
I personally enjoyed the first one more, but I will acknowledge that Empire is better.
You know what? I haven't even seen the first one in probably like 10 years. I owned all 6 at one point. Somehow my episode 4 got lost, and I always knew I was going to rebuy it on Blu-ray, so I never went out and rebought the 4th one on DVD because I didn't want to spend the money. And so every time I would watch the saga, I would watch episodes 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So I don't even remember the 4th one.
Now, I will admit, all of the other movies that we have talked about on here that I have already seen, I did not rewatch. Like, I did not rewatch Prisoners this week. I did, however, rewatch Empire because I said, like Brandon over here, I have not seen this movie in a very long time.
Oh, I watched this movie like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this movie in probably 2 or 3 years, so I rewatched it this week, and I will say that I enjoy it now a lot more that I'm like older than I did when I was younger. When I was younger, it was like, oh, this is depressing and dark. I don't like this one. Let's go to Jedi and see the Ewoks and happy ending. But watching this as an older person, I think that, yes, this is a masterpiece.
And what I think, absolutely, I think this is as close to a masterpiece as American Beauty might even be.
I mean, this is certainly up there with the greatest sequels of all time, if it's not the best sequel.
It's got, to me, it's a top 10 film of all time over any movie ever made in any list. I think it should be definitely it's a top 100 film of all time, and like in the critics' reviews, if not high up on that list.
Yeah, Empire is the gold standard. If you're gonna do a drama sequel, the gold standard is The Godfather Part 2. If you're gonna do the second part of a major franchise trilogy, Empire is what you're basing it off of.
And if you're gonna do a third film, Toy Story 3 is the way to go.
Yes, a nice way to end it. What, you wouldn't say that Return of the Jedi is the definitive?
No.
Friggin'
I think what makes Empire so great is it's great even as a standalone movie. You don't have to even watch the first one to know what's going on in the second one.
Yes,
they kind
you
of go
do
over it
kind
in the
of
beginning
establish
scrolls where, okay, the Death Star is blown up and the Empire has basically driven the rebels out of the system and they're hiding, and Darth Vader is still on the lookout for Luke. Yeah, there's some references to the first movie, to Episode 4, but like I want my wife to watch this movie so bad and she won't.
This
and I
is
tell her
very
all the
much,
time, I said, you don't have to watch any of the other 6 movies. Like this, I think, can work as a standalone movie.
I think it's the same thing with The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight makes more sense if you watch Batman Begins, but you
Exactly,
can just watch
because
The Dark
I
Knight.
did not even watch Batman Begins before I saw The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize that because of the two totally different names, I didn't realize they were connected.
I mean, Empire
15, 16
Empire
time.
Strikes Back, I fully recommend that you watch at least the first one, New Hope, before this, because A New Hope is a great movie.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you have
but
interest
you-
in Star
you
Wars,
can.
if you have interest in Star Wars, yeah, you can absolutely watch Episode 4
But
before
if
you
you
watch
don't,
5.
if you don't care,
But someone like my wife
you
who
can enjoy Empire.
doesn't even want anything to do with Star Wars, that hopefully eventually she will watch this, you don't have to watch Episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4 to understand.
I
the
will
fifth
say
one.
there is one very good reason why you should watch the first movie before you watch this one, though, because the Darth Vader is Luke's father, probably one of the most famous twist endings of all time.
Oh, we'll get into
It
that.
makes it has more of an impact if you watch him in the first movie, because in the first movie, based off of that film, there was nothing to hint that Darth Vader was his father, and they basically just established him as being the guy who killed his father, who's the worst person in the galaxy. So I will say that the best part of the movie, the reveal, has a lot more of an effect on you if you watch A New Hope first.
And it's funny too because I remember saying I don't even care about saying spoiler alert because one,
If
that's
you don't
not
know
even a
that
spoiler.
one,
I think you know how we're in college here. We get to write papers. I'm in the middle of writing one now, and you have to cite your sources unless it's common knowledge. I feel if I was writing a paper and I put in there that Darth Vader is Luke's dad, I don't have to cite it.
Yeah, to the one person out there who's confused by that and didn't know that, Bruce Willis is also dead the entire Sixth Sense. Like, oh, sorry, there were just certain twist
The other
endings.
thing.
Yeah, there were just certain twist endings.
I only watched
The
The Sixth Sense for the first time about 2 years ago, a
I
year and a half ago.
I did know the ending,
But
of
I knew
The
it.
Sixth
I
Sense,
knew the ending way
I think it's a
before
good movie though, even if you don't know the ending,
that.
or even if you do know the ending. My bad.
But to me, that's the biggest revelation in movie history.
Probably the greatest movie twist ever.
Yeah.
Yes, I would agree with you there.
And I wonder, there's a couple of things here. I wonder if legit fans knew going into this movie who Vader was, or everybody
I don't
was shocked.
think anybody knew.
I don't know if it was
I
in any
think that
books,
that was-
if it was in any comics, or
No,
if it was any.
it was not actually the books that came out. There was a book that was an authorized sequel at the time to Star Wars that basically establishes that Darth Vader is not his father.
Okay.
And so this was a huge twist. Nobody saw it coming. I mean, based off of the first movie, I don't know any way you could have predicted it because there was nothing in the first film that even indicated this.
I also wonder, because there was a scene, I think it's the first time that Vader talks to Palpatine.
Mhm.
Palpatine saying, you have to find Luke. He is Anakin's son.
Mhm.
And Darth Vader is like, how can you be sure? And then Palpatine goes, search your feelings, you know it to be true.
And then
I
he says,
wonder if
"Search
at that
your
point, fans started to get the idea that maybe Vader is Luke's father, and they don't reveal that for another hour into the movie.
I think there's probably that's why it's a good movie twist. You give fans opportunities where they could have figured it out, because it's a bad twist if you just stick something in there and there was nothing hinting at it. I think there were probably people the first time who saw it that figured that out, but it was also kind of ambiguous because he said Anakin's son, not your son. So
Yeah, well, Anakin is dead. Like, when Darth Vader became Darth Vader, Anakin died, Vader came up, and so
they explain
they're
all of
pretty
that
much two different
rationale.
people. Same person, but two different people.
I mean, in the first film, he straight up said he killed your father, not he is your father, which at the time in movies nobody had done a twist like that before, so nobody had anything or any reason to believe anything other than Darth Vader had just killed his
I wonder
father.
what that would have been like, that whole time would have been like, had social media been around. when that movie came out.
That would have gone crazy. There's no way that twist would not have been ruined for a billion people.
Oh, even in the new Star Wars, I'm not going to say what happens and who's who and the big twist in Star Wars 7, but like the day or two after, I'm on Facebook and I'm like scrolling through and I'm reading an article about, I forget, it was a Sports Center article, so football or something, and randomly in the comments, every major spoiler in Episode 7. Just randomly, just because they can do that. That is the
only reason I saw it. I already had tickets to see Episode 7.
It's unfortunate that people do that.
A week later, and I went the first day, even though I had tickets to go see it later, because I knew there was no way that I was going to, if I didn't see it the first day, it wasn't going to get spoiled.
I wonder how that spoiler would have held up, how that twist would have held up in the 70s or 80s when this movie came out.
People would have been yelling it in the streets.
I also wonder...
There's actually a great Simpsons joke that makes fun of that, where him and Marge walk out of Episode 5, Empire, and...
No, that was Family Guy.
No, that was Simpsons, trust me.
Was it The Simpsons?
Trust me, giant Simpsons nerd. It was Simpsons. They walk out of the theater and there's a huge line of people waiting to see Empire Strikes Back. And he goes, I can't believe that Darth Vader was Luke's father. And everybody starts throwing garbage at him. And
are you sure that's The Simpsons?
Yes.
Because I love The Simpsons and I'm almost positive that was Family Guy.
No, it was the episode where Marge gets pregnant with Bart.
Oh yeah. Okay, I remember that now. I always thought that was Family Guy. I was thinking about that too. I thought that was a Family Guy like flashback thing.
Well, I know it's easy to get those shows confused. I mean, on the one hand, Simpsons is the greatest show of all time, and on the other hand, Family Guy is the show that completely ripped it off.
But it's still just
that's my little rant.
You think people knew who Yoda was too? People who weren't super nerds that knew everything about Star Wars, do you think they knew who Yoda was? Because Yoda doesn't really reveal who, like, himself. You see him, but he doesn't say, I'm Yoda. Until Luke kind of figures it out 20 minutes after meeting Yoda.
About Yoda, let's talk about that. Everybody talks about how iconic the first movie was. Yoda is easily one of the most famous characters from that franchise, and we didn't see him till Empire.
You didn't see him, or you didn't see Boba Fett.
Which is, my point exactly. You had, first of all, that ice battle at the beginning, super good.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second.
Two of the most famous characters in the entire franchise didn't actually come in until
That's how you know you have a good movie, when two of the most well-known characters are in a sequel.
And or
first introduced in a sequel.
Boba Fett's a really famous character. He's only on screen for like 8 minutes.
Yeah.
In like the whole franchise.
Very, very small time... screen time in Empire, and then
I don't think he actually says
at Jabba the Hutt's place in Jedi.
Yeah, but no words of dialogue on the screen for like 8 minutes.
Yeah, it was funny. I was watching it yesterday, and I stole my brother's Blu-ray saga because I'm a bigger Star Wars fan than him, and I'm a bigger Star Wars fan than my older brother. Yet my younger brother was the one that got the complete saga on Blu-ray for Christmas, and I didn't. I was really pissed. So I borrowed it from him, and he'll have to come back. And next time he comes over my apartment, he'll have to take it back because I'm not bringing it back. He'll figure out. But so I was watching it, and my wife comes in, and it was right at the part when they're on the meteor and they come out of the worm's mouth. And she goes, "Wow, what cheesy effects!" I was like, "Yeah, but that's what makes this movie so great." And you think about it. And it feels like a classic because
it looks better than
it's
CGI.
Not. It's much. And I'm not going to say cheesy because if those effects is what it looked like and they made it today, absolutely the cheesy effects. But when this movie came out,
groundbreaking back then. Yeah,
and it makes it feel like an older classic movie, and it's
we talked last week about how we prefer the use of practical effects over CGI. So I like going back and watching movies like Star Wars where they did it all with practical effects. It's very refreshing. Because if you get CGI, you get I Am Legend with the fake looking zombies.
When I was looking through the booklet that came with the DVDs, it's like 45 hours of special features on this thing.
Of course.
I was like, that's 2 days nonstop. I can't wait to just...
Well, if you watch the Lord of the Rings, the extended editions, there's like 12 hours of extras.
I tried. I have one of like the collector box of Lord of the Rings, and I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan. Again, it was my brothers, and I just took it from him because he
I
was selling
only
it.
managed to sit through the special features because it's like 10 or 12 hours.
Each movie, aside from a 3-hour runtime in the movie, the special features are really long and they really go in depth. But not being a Lord of the Rings guy, I stopped.
To be fair,
halfway
though,
through the first one.
the 12 hours are interesting because so much went into making those movies.
The Star Wars, though, the same way I sat through every special feature that the Dark Knight series had to offer, I will sit through most of the 45 hours worth of special features for this, especially for Empire.
Yeah, because there's a lot of interesting little tidbits about those movies. I'm not going to go into them, but just a lot of there's a lot of very fun stuff about how they managed to pull stuff off before computers.
Yeah, and so you were talking earlier about the great Hoth, the battle on Hoth.
Oh yeah, easily.
And
one of the
I
best
say this
scenes
is
out of that franchise.
This is the movie with the best beginning, middle, and end story. Not necessarily the best stories, but I think it's a perfect beginning, it's a perfect middle, and it's a perfect end.
Well, it starts with that great action set piece that immediately catches your attention. It has the second training montage, which how many movies have ripped off Yoda's training montage? Like, that's iconic. And then it has the ending that has the huge reveal where everything goes to hell. It's got Han Solo's famous "I know" line. Like,
it's a 2-hour and 10-minute movie. It doesn't feel like 2 hours.
It really doesn't.
No, because you get through the Hoth battle with the big AT-ATs and the snow speeders, and it's so great. And the whole toe hit, the toe line, and tripping them up, I think is great.
And honestly, that action sequence, it really holds up. You can watch it today, and it still looks really good.
And you get through that, and by the time that's over, you realize you're like 45 minutes into the movie. And then you go through the training montage with Yoda and Luke, and at the same time you're watching Leia, Han, and Chewbacca flee from the Empire in space, and they're going through the asteroid belt, and they go into the crater, and then the whole thing with the worm, and then by the time that's done, it's like you got a half hour left of the movie, and it's all just kind of gone by so fast because everything is so fun to watch. And then you get to the end, and that's when you find out.
And the last
about
third,
Vader.
There aren't any big action sequences, but from a story level and an emotional standpoint, it hits you about 10 times. Just with different revelations and reveals, and the fact that, this is not going to end happy at all. All of our characters are going to be in really bad situations at the end of this movie. Although that long shot at the end, when they're in the spaceship and they're looking out the side of it, that was pretty gorgeous.
You think so, with the galaxy there?
Yeah. I thought
that was the only
place
small little thing that I wasn't overly thrilled about, because I was watching it and I was like, I don't really know if I believe that they're looking out and seeing a galaxy like that. Because I think it's the only time in the whole saga that they ever showed that.
Well, but it was a good little thing to end it on. It was a nice little scene. I thought that it looked very gorgeous, and it was a great little point to end the film on. Somewhat being like, we're kind of screwed, but sort of optimistic at the same time.
But when I think of the Star Wars universe, doesn't it take place in one galaxy?
It does. Apparently, it is a galaxy far, far away, a long
Well, no, it's not even that. It's just when you see that ending sequence and you see that ending shot with the galaxy, it's like, is that the galaxy where they're from? If that's a different galaxy,
no, that's the galaxy they're from.
Why are they? And you have to think, to see a galaxy in its entirety like that, you have to be millions and millions of light years away from there. So why are they that far away from the galaxy?
Well, that's the one they're in, and they can probably see other galaxies as well. I think that the whole point of that was they just went through this really traumatic event. They lost Han, Luke lost his hand, found out that Darth Vader was his father, but they're looking out at the majesty of the galaxy, and they're still having this one final moment of optimism where they're like, regardless of all this bad stuff, there's so much out there, and we're a very small part of it, and things can work out. So I think that's what he was intending by that scene, trying to have one moment of beauty and still show that these characters still had that spark of, basically, if there had been dialogue in that scene, it would have been like, so we're getting Han back, right? And they would have been like, yeah.
Yeah. Again, I can talk about this movie for another hour. I specifically only pulled a few things from the movie because I knew I wanted to keep this as short as possible. But as you can tell, I love this movie. And even though it's number 3 and I can watch my number 1 and 2 movies more than this is the one I get most excited to watch.
And again, I would have put something like this or The Dark Knight on my list, but because I have more like arty taste than Brandon does, I was going to let him do the big budget stuff, and I was going to try and do things like American Beauty that were
that's the difference between us.
A little more drama, like set in reality.
Yeah, and again, you see it for the more deeper meanings than I do.
Well, and I do just want to establish I'm obsessed with superhero movies, so it's not like I don't watch those kinds of movies. They don't tend to be the ones that are my favorites.
Yeah. All right, so we'll end on that.
All right.
That was my number 3.
And I guess we're going to talk about Mad Max next week.
We'll talk about Mad Max next.
Yeah, speaking of unrealistic movies that look really cool, Mad Max
Fury Road we'll get into. I am so lucky to have watched it last night because I searched for 3 or 4 days every red box around me so I can watch it on Blu-ray.
You need to
watch
that movie on Blu-ray.
Every red box I went to, they only had it on DVD, and I said no way. I almost just bought the Blu-ray because I knew I was going to buy it eventually.
You should just go buy it.
I can't spend that much money, especially since
when I get a little
every shift I'm supposed to be working gets canceled, and I'm not making money. I can't. So, but for three or 4 straight days, I kept going back to the red box of my Walmart, only Blu-ray, and out of the corner of my eye, as I'm driving home, I was like, you know what? I guess if I have to rent it through like Verizon or on demand for like $7, whatever, I will. I didn't want to, and I corner of my eye, I see a red box at Walgreens across the street. I was like, let me just go check. And the last one I checked, I finally had it on Blu-ray. I was so thrilled because I did not want to settle for a standard definition.
No, there are certain movies you need to watch.
My wife doesn't understand it. She watched it with me. She really enjoyed it, and she doesn't get the whole, why do you have to watch it on Blu-ray? I was like, are you not watching the same movie as I am? I thought that this was the most visually stunning movie I've ever seen.
And we'll get into that more next week. I want to save some of that.
Well, why? What do you?
Oh no, we're talking about it now. Never mind.
Oh wait, no, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We have nothing else to talk about. So we got about 15 minutes before we have to leave.
I think that this is easily the best big budget movie of the year. The story was amazing. The acting was great. I think that Tom Hardy was a fantastic replacement for Mel Gibson, who was replaced for obvious reasons. Charlize Theron as Furiosa is one of the great female action heroes of all time. And like I said, this is a 2-hour car chase. You're watching this movie.
I didn't know how much I wanted to believe that, and then I started watching the movie, and 20 minutes in, my wife's
still going.
My wife's like, they're still in the cars, and it was like, yeah, and we have another hour and 40 minutes of it. But it's awesome.
It kept your attention.
Yes.
Just that you're watching this movie, and anybody does not have to understand. You don't have to understand how movies are made to just watch this and tell oh wow, how did somebody pull this off? The technical.
It's hard to pinpoint one scene because the whole movie visually is gorgeous.
Well, and this is all done with practical effects. There is really no CGI in the movie.
I think. So it's hard to pinpoint, but I would say the one scene that sticks out to me is when it's towards the beginning, and it's when they go through the storm.
Yes, that was pretty cool.
I thought that was one of the coolest parts of the whole movie. It's so hard to pick and choose because the whole movie...
I said, I loved the guy with the death metal guitar with the fire coming out. That was just so awesome.
And I was like, as soon as I came out, I was like, yep, that's what he's talking about. At first I was like, what's the point? And then I kind of thought, I was like, I feel like this is the post-apocalyptic version of a drum line from the Revolutionary War. And they're going through and they're playing the drums and they're keeping everybody in check. I feel that because you have the guys on the drums on the back of the truck,
this
and then
movie starts out as this very simple story where it's a bunch of people trying to escape this warlord, and you're sort of like, okay, where is this going? Why is this a film? This looks cool, but from a story standpoint, I don't really understand why we're watching this. And then at the end of the movie, the resolution to the film, just you're like, oh, okay, this was a complete story, and it's very in line with the idea of Max just shows up in people's lives, saves the day, and then just kind of walks off into the distance.
Well, I'll give a quick spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Not that there really is anything. There's no big twist about it.
If you've seen The Road
bad
Warrior,
guy,
it's the same story arc.
The bad guy dies. That happens in every movie.
Actually, the bad guy was the same actor who was in The Road Warrior. So
I haven't seen
same villain from The Road Warrior. They got the same actor to come back and play.
This was the first Mad Max that I saw, and I'm kind of intrigued to go back and watch the other three.
If you saw The Road Warrior, it's the same basic story arc. Like, if you were to do a very quick summary of the movie, it's pretty much the exact same thing, which is exactly what he was trying to do.
I was kind of wondering what is Max's point in this movie, and like you said, it really comes together at the very end.
And for much of the movie, I would say the actual hero of this movie is
Furiosa,
but
I thought she was more of a main character.
I liked the albino guy too. I thought the albino guy.
This movie, without a doubt, wins. Visual effects, or I don't know if that's a category.
Oh yeah, and even beating out Star Wars. Star Wars is a tough bet.
I have it on my notes here that I thought for a long time that Star Wars was such a great movie visually, and then I saw this movie and I said this one blows. If you think Star Wars looks great, this one blows it out of the water.
We were talking about action sequences with this. The best action sequence I saw all year was there's a scene where these guys get those pole vaulter poles, and they're vaulting from cars onto the truck, and all the cars in the truck are going 70
It almost
miles an
reminded
hour.
me
They did it with practical effects. These were real human beings doing this, and it just looked so cool.
It almost reminded me all the car chase scenes. It reminded me of I don't really know the name of it. I probably should have checked because I knew I was going to come up with this. The Robo Wars, or the robotic death matches where scientists and engineers create their robots, and they have death matches, robot battles, and that's what I felt like this was like. They took old vehicles and they ramped them up, and they put spikes on them, they put explosives on them, they put all these weapons on them, and to just destroy every other car. And that's what it reminded me of, which I thought was great.
I mean, we can go into all the technical reasons why this movie was good, but it really just boils down to one thing. This movie was so fun. Everything about this movie you're really enjoying.
I think this was the first, I can't really say first time because I know Star Wars, I had a big smile on my face the whole time I watched it.
Yeah, same here.
I had the same grin on my face when I watched this movie.
I mean, this is just a really fun movie.
It's a very simple movie. You might, unless you watch the first three, you might not get all the terminology and all the details about it, like who's who, because I didn't. But it's a very simple movie premise-wise, and you catch on pretty quick as to what's going on.
I actually have a theory that the best action movies are simple premises. I mean, if you look at stuff like, Die Hard, extremely simple premise, totally worked. Because it's an action movie. It's supposed to be about the action set pieces. It's supposed to be about the sequences. So, the simpler the story, the better. And it doesn't really get much simpler than the Mad Max films.
Even Star Wars Empire Strikes Back was not a complicated movie.
No, it's really not.
If you boil it down to a basic storyline, it's the Empire is looking for Luke. And that's the whole movie.
You need to do a simple story, but have complex characters.
That's the thing. They
both Empire and Mad Max nailed that.
Unless you know the backstories and you know the prequels and what goes on, and you really read into it, you might not get all the references, and you might not know each character the way that they're portrayed on screen, but you get the basic premise of the movie.
Well, that was actually the problem with the Star Wars prequels, and also there was a third Mad Max movie called Beyond Thunderdome, which is enjoyable in the same way that Rocky IV is, in that it's a very cheesy movie, and you can watch it kind of ironically and sort of enjoy how over the top it is, but it's not a good sequel. This is a much better sequel to Road Warrior. In fact, they have this take place before Beyond Thunderdome, because this was the sequel he should have made to Road Warrior, both the prequels and the third Mad Max movie have the same issue. They forgot that this is very simple stories with complex characters and tried to make the stories way too complicated.
For as much as I love Star Wars, the prequels, for as many times as I've seen them, I still get very confused as to what's going on.
Well, and the characters aren't very well developed. Because they had to spend all this time trying to just make this story make sense because it's so complicated. I mean, it still confounds me that they actually felt the need to talk about galactic trade routes in Star Wars, because that's what we all loved about the first one, like trade law in space. But
anyway, Mad Max Fury Road, must see it, and without a doubt, see it in Blu-ray. Do not
now
settle.
You think George Miller deserves the best director for this?
Yeah.
Yep. I totally agree with
you. And I thought it wins. I think it absolutely wins for best visuals. I think it should win for best costume design, and I think
production design, definitely.
Production design, and for best sound. And I thought it was so cool when I think there were definitely two, if not more, instances where you hear the ringing from a gunshot whizzing past your ear.
Well, you have multiple cars going on. This is a very loud set, so for them to even mix the sound in this movie cohesively, so that it's
what I'm talking about, though. I think there was one part where I think it was Max
during the storm, and they hear
it was right after the storm. I think when Max meets Furiosa, and he has her up against the truck, and he shoots a bullet next to her head.
Yeah.
And you hear it ping off the truck, and then you hear the ringing, and in your ear it sounds like the bullet just went past your ear in real life. Like that's how great the sound is in this movie.
Well, everything about this movie was done to technical precision. Honestly, I think that every technical award that it's nominated for, it should win. Because
I think
there's not any aspect of this movie that was done poorly.
No, and I think you can even compare the sound in this movie to, I think, the best sounding sequence, which I don't remember experiencing in the theater, but in Star Wars Episode 2. You remember that movie?
Yes, the Attack of the Clones.
Yes, the depth charges in space.
Yes,
I think that is one of the coolest things. That when you play that movie, just crank the volume up to 100 and blow your speakers out. It is the coolest sounding. It is the coolest sounding thing you'll ever hear in a movie.
I will say, though, that cinematography is going to go to The Revenant, and I think it should.
I thought the same thing.
Give the actual camera shooting awards to The Revenant, but everything else, give it to Mad Max.
Visual effects, design, sound.
Production design.
Go to.
Costumes. Yeah.
I thought it was great. But do you have anything else on that? Because we're running way over.
I don't have anything else next week.
I'd like to try to keep this to an hour. We're at an hour and 10 minutes, which isn't bad.
Okay.
But just a quick recap. Our number 3 movies, mine was Empire Strikes Back, Brian's was American Beauty, and Darius's, who hopefully will be here next week to talk about our number 2 picks, is Prisoners. We'll have
number 2 pick.
Our number 2 picks next week, along with I'm going on Friday to go see 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi.
Yeah,
I've heard very good things about that movie. Regardless that it's a Michael Bay movie, I heard it is very well done.
I have tickets to go see comedian Jim Jeffries, so I will not be at 13 Hours.
Well, I will be. And then I think once we're done with this top 5, I have a couple of ideas, because I don't want to just be the same podcast webcast talk show that just talks about just the new movies. I have a couple of ideas of where we can go with this after our top 5, but we'll get into that in a couple of weeks.
And I'm going to do whatever Brandon comes up with, because his ideas are pretty good.
Yeah. So 13 Hours, we'll talk about next week, will be the new movie. And then I'll also pick, I have 3 remaining Oscar Best Picture nominations left.
I have 3 of those.
Brooklyn, Room, and Bridge of Spies. I will watch one of those.
Ironically, those are my exact 3 that I need to see. I need to see Brooklyn, Bridge of Spies.
We'll try to talk about those 3 remaining up to the Oscars. I think one week will get us to the Oscars.
I need to see Carol.
Carol, how many? There's 5. No, Carol is not.
Oh, I need to see Room.
Yeah, Carol is not nominated.
I need to see Room, I need to see Brooklyn, and I need to see Bridge of Spies. So
Carol is not nominated. It was for the Golden Globes, but not.
Tell you what, how about you want to try and do Bridge of Spies next week? See if we can knock that one out.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, we'll see if we can.
Tell Darius,
watch
too. I know
that.
you see more than I do.
Yeah,
tell him just in
we'll
case
both
he
try
tries.
and watch Bridge of Spies and see if we can talk about that one next week, because I like Spielberg and I like Tom Hanks, and I especially like it when they work together.
You know what else I like most about this episode?
What?
Didn't have to rush it.
Yes.
We had a full 2 hours to do it. So, anyway, with that said, let's rush and get out of here because I want to beat the traffic getting home.
That's all, folks.
All right, we'll see you next week.